Some traders in Kintampo in the Bono East region have described promises made by former President John Dramani Mahama with regards to paying affected customers who lost their monies to collapsed financial institutions as a scam. They say politicians would always present juicy promises but would not execute them when voted into power. Correspondent Anna Sabit has more in the next report.
As has been introduced in other economies, the next NDC administration will establish a financial services authority that will be responsible for ensuring that consumer financial markets work for consumers and providers and for the economy as a whole. This financial services authority will oversee all financial products and services that are offered to consumers and will effectively and efficiently prevent and stop the challenges that have confronted customers of Men's Gold, DKM, and others.
This is the former President John Dramani Mahama pledging to set up a financial services authority to help streamline the financial sector in Ghana when elected as president in the December polls. Mr. Mahama promised that the next NDC government will pay customers their full monies locked up in the collapsed financial institutions.
I pledge on behalf of the NDC that we shall, within 1 year of being in office, pay all funds that have been locked up with the collapsed financial institutions.
The people of the Bono East region who were mostly affected as a result of the collapse of microfinance institutions prior to the 2016 general elections. What does this promise mean to them? We engaged some traders in the Kintampo North municipality, and this has been their reactions.
And I can't say by when Timmy Mobia, what the net etchna the chance, and a month for 1 month, woo, yeah, 1 month better composure. And yes, a quarter of a month to my yet, immediately.
While some are of the view that the promise is only to score cheap political points, a few others are of the belief that the promise is realistic. Madiza is one of them.
Ina da imani kamar ya zo ya yi biya gaskiya ne. Ina da imani don abin da ya yi da ya wuce. Shi yasa na yi imani kamar ya zo ya yi biya. Na ji dadi sosai. Na ji dadi sosai fa ya yi biya.
To the many people we spoke with, their trust in political promises is on the decline, adding that most politicians are no more trustworthy.
Oh no, no boss na omo candidate. Manyofo ni nyina no omaya ma yahu se omutumi ntra ya omekeka sansam ni kire se na be ya yebetimi ato aba ama omo. Nti omo de me emeti we se ba de me nji omo ndi se boss na ya omo hye ni bebrebe no ni nyina no.
Amanyofo ni nyina no yanyi omo ni.Ise omo pe sitini dia yebe kan yama aye firi ma kire se wo babu won na obedi won chi.
Reporting for Joy News, Anas Sabit, Kintampo.
Flagbearer hopeful of the People's National Convention, David Asibi Apasera, has unveiled his plans for the party should he be given the nod to lead the party in the 2020 polls. David Apasera says Ghanaians will see an increase in the number of parliamentary candidates of the PNC, which will reflect the national character of the party. Though he has little hope of winning the 2020 elections, he says the party's performance would not be abysmal. Upper West Regional Correspondent Rafik Salam reports from Wa.
The People National Convention PNC flag-bearer hopeful David Asibi Apasera, in an exclusive interview with Joy News after meeting with some regional and constituency executives of the party, stated that he has what it takes to change the fortunes of the party considering the enormous political experience beneath his sleeves.
The flag bearer has to be the face of the party everywhere, and the flag bearer has to be on the ground everywhere. The flag bearer has to make sure that the party is properly organized at every community. That is how the party can go forward. That is how people can vote for you. That is why I know how it is to organize a party from grassroots and then bring it up to victory. So I want to be the party flag bearer, to be able to carry the party forward.
David Apasara debunked the notion that the PNC is poor and there's no way they can win political power.
All political parties are poor. All political parties have the potential of becoming rich. If you win power, then there you are able to have leverage. You are able to have resources to use for party organization. If we had won, I can tell you, we would have been also stronger. When we started politics in 1992, in my constituency, we were far stronger than MPP. Today, MPP is having greater numbers. Why? It's because we have not. And to be honest, nobody used personal resources to run party. We raise resources, we raise funds. And if you are holding power, you can raise funds.
He is of the belief that the PNC will be better having him as its leader.
You will see PNC in every community. You will see PNC in every community. You will see PNC parliamentarians or parliamentary candidates all over. And you will see the national results reflecting a party that stands tall amongst its peers.
Reflecting that stands tall means that you win the 2020 polls?
I am not saying I will win the 2020 polls, but it should not be abysmal performance. It shouldn't. We should show ourselves strong and show ourselves a worthy political party, a platform where every young man can use to spring the political arena.
Accompanying the former Bolga Central Member of Parliament on the campaign trail is former Deputy Minister of Health and MP for Sasala East, Moses Daniba, who is going to be the party's national chairman.
2020 polls, I've already mentioned to my national executive and the regional executive that PNC is aiming at 5 seats in Parliament like we had before.
How are you going to do it?
Yes, we are looking at the candidates who have the capacity and see what kind of resources that we will support them with. We are willing to go to their constituencies and campaign for them.
Reporting for Joy News, Rafiq Salam.
Now away from politics, World Vision Ghana has provided mechanized borehole system to 3 rural communities in the Kratchi West district of the Oti region, and it is to enhance hand hygiene, one of the cheapest and safest way to prevent the spread of coronavirus. The projects are expected to improve access to potable water, sanitation and hygiene among over 7,300 residents in the beneficiary communities. Fred Kwame has more.
Residents of the Chuesu, Abujo and Monkra communities in the Kratchi West district had difficulty in accessing potable water. Water yields of boreholes provided in these communities were insufficient. The residents lamented they are unable to get enough water for use at home, even though they spent several hours at the borehole site. Realizing the plight of the residents, World Vision Ghana channeled a donor fund of $130,000 into rehabilitating the facilities. Joshua Baidu is the World Vision Ghana Southern Regional Operations Manager.
Last year, World Vision Ghana received a little over $130,000 from private donors in South Korea, which was to be used to provide mechanized water systems with 12 water points in Wankra and Treso communities. Additionally, World Vision mechanized an existing water borehole and provided 3 extra water points for the people of Abujuro community. This has brought to a total of 15 water points in the 3 communities, about 7,238 community members. I must say that the water systems could not have been provided at a better time than this novel coronavirus pandemic era, when the cheapest and safest prevention of COVID-19 infection is regular washing of hands with soap under running water. Therefore, the importance of access to clean water in these communities, especially for women and children, who hitherto had to walk more than 6 kilometers for untreated water, cannot be overemphasized.
The Assembly member for Monkra, Charles Engineer, indicated the provision of the mechanized water systems in the area would enhance the livelihoods of residents.
Today, Monkra community has a mechanized 7 water points, 14 times. This means that children will not go to school late. Parents will have time to expand their farm, and waterborne-related diseases is a thing of the past.
The Kratche West District Chief Executive, Douglas Osei-Inti, commended the organization on the initiative, adding it would complement efforts by the Assembly in increasing access to potable water. Fred Kwame Asari, Joy News, Monkra.
Oh, that's it for the news highlights. But we do have more news as we look at the newspapers next. Do stay with us. Well, and Mama, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, Roland. Welcome. Good. I'm good. I'm good.
Day. And Gifty also is joining us. Gifty, good morning to you. Okay, so we're just working the streams to make sure we get Gifty. It's the birthday of Michael Abedu. You work with Our Lady of Grace Hospital in Swedro, Agona Swedro, and you say that I should give you all the alcohol. Today's your birthday. And
What's his name again?
Wish you Michael Abedu.
Michael Abedu of Agona Swedro.
Our
hospital?
Our Lady of Grace Hospital.
Our Lady of Grace Hospital in Agona Swedro. Okay, happy birthday to you.
No, Michael.
Enjoy
Sweet
your birthday
Michael.
today.
Yeah.
And stay safe. Keep safe.
Yeah, wear your masks.
Yeah, like our last hope. You know that. All right, so we're on to the newspapers. One of the stories that broke later in the afternoon yesterday, I'm not sure how much of it has been reported in the main newspapers. At least I don't see it on the front page of the Daily Graphic, but details of it on myjournline.com. We'll talk about Daniel Domalovo, the Auditor General, who decided to go to his office yesterday and not necessarily to work. He's on leave. He's been asked to proceed on a compulsory leave, which he's supposed to be doing right now. But he went to his office. Like, it will happen to you when you're on leave. You decide to go to your office. Who knows? Either to pick something or to check something, whatever it is. He realized that his office door, the lock had been changed. He couldn't have access. He had a key that couldn't open the office. This thing is getting, is deepening the controversies and getting people talking and raising lots of questions. So it's one of the things we'll be talking about. But let's quickly go through the Daily Graphic newspaper. Front page, lynching of 90-year-old woman. Kafaba chief arrested, 13 others on the run. President describes action as barbaric. 34 COVID-19 rapid test kits fail validation tests. This was the Food and Drugs Authority's boss making that revelation yesterday at the press conference. No blankets mop up after registration, according to the Electoral Commission. MTN challenges NCA directive in courts. In the center spread of the paper today, President inaugurates Nalerugu water system. It was the Yape yesterday that was reported. It's Nalerigu today. Device solutions for COVID-19 challenges. Ajikum Jamina charges managers. That's the head of the civil service, Nanakwesi Ajikum Jamina. He's urged administrators and managers of organizations to devise innovative solutions to save businesses and entities from the debilitating effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. 22 pharmacists inducted. The Ghana College of Pharmacists has inducted 22 newly qualified members into the pharmaceutical profession with a call on them to devise innovative ways to help solve some of the challenges facing the healthcare system in the country. Maybe this could have been a profession for me, Roland.
Yeah,
pharmacist.
definitely.
Because you can do multiple things. You know, you can have the license, you can open a pharmaceutical, like a pharmacy. You can open a pharmacy, and then you can also work as a pharmacist.
Definitely.
You know, I could have done.
That's you can work. You can be a businesswoman. You can be whatever.
Oh my God. Back page of the Daily Graphic. Charlie, around these times, if you're still training, if you're trying to find a profession, you should go with passion, definitely, but you should also look at areas where you can do multiple things. Because
so do I deduce from what you're saying that you've been looking at various areas?
Of course, you have to be smart around these times.
I think we need to tell your employers that you've been exploring beyond.
Oh, I'm sure.
Tax that they say you should undertake.
I'm sure they themselves are even exploring. Businesses are trying to look at ways to cut down, man. So we also have to
diversify.
On the back page, illegal structures demolished at Kumasi race course. Giants massed around Wa Airport to be removed. That's the Daily Graphic newspaper. I'll come back and give you a bit of the MTN challenging the NCA directive and quote a bit about that story in the graphic. But let's do the Ghanaian Times front page. 78 Volta region markets, lorry parks, others disinfected amid COVID-19. President condemns lynching of 90-year-old woman at Kafaba, orders arrest of corporates. FDA rejects 34 substandard rapid diagnostic tests kits. Health alert, hepatitis B birth dose shortage hits country. 147,000 newborns likely to be affected. This is a very serious story. Details in the center spread. So about this figure, 147,000 newborns stand the risk of being exposed to hepatitis B this year due to the non-availability of birth dose to avert the infection in the country. Acting Program Manager of the National Viral Hepatitis Control Program for the Ghana Health Service, Dr. Achu Kwao, said of the number, 90% may actually end up being infected as the burden of the disease continues to rise among pregnant women. Details of that very worrying story in the center spread of the paper. Is it because the focus now is on COVID-19 and so we're not getting this vaccine or we don't have money to purchase? Back page of the paper, President inaugurates 9.7 million water supply project. Police headquarters gets cafeteria, mini police station. There's a mini police station now at the police headquarters. The Director General in charge of welfare at the Ghana Police Service, Mami Yatiwadu Dankwa, has inaugurated a mini police station at the Criminal Investigation Department at the police headquarters. The facility, funded by CAX Estate Limited, consists of a charge office for the supervising officer, male and female cells, and a staff hall. There's more to the story. Let's see, last paper or last two, the Finder, front page of the Finder. Mahama's track record in office abysmal, according to the Vice President, Dr. Baumia. Financial Services Authority among Mahama's 10 campaign promises. Nalerigu gets 4.9 million Ghana cedis water project. President admonishes residents to protect water bodies. Court quashes University of Education win about pro-VC elections, orders new elections. Ghana Health Service to publish outcome of hydrochloroquine use on COVID-19 patients. And this is the Director General of the Ghana Health Service also saying yesterday. And I thought, listen, a lot of countries are doing this. Why do we have to wait? Somebody poses the question and then we're now, I don't know, I feel like, because listen, there's an international research that says, for instance, that if you're overweight, if you've got excessive weight, you are more likely, if you've got COVID-19, to be admitted in an intensive care unit. You're more likely to die or hospitalized, essentially. And I feel like countries are doing these kind of research for themselves. So I kind of ask myself, so what we are recording, where we are now, what can we say about ourselves? Is it the same? Does that also affect us? Have we done some of these researches? I think we should. We should invest in some of these things so that we can also guide our own. What we're doing, even though we're following World Health Organization directives, we also say homegrown stuff, because this is Ghana. There are things that are peculiar to us. So we should be interested in the research so we can get some of these things for ourselves.
Yeah. You know, the last time we had some bigger conversation on the subject, Dr. Kofi Amegan, for example, of the UCC, who also does a lot of work when it comes to clinical nutrition, this state that generally the statistics seem to favor us per the population. Because we find the general population within the younger categorization, so to speak, so they tend to withstand. And I do agree with you. The reason why, to complement what you said, we need to do the studies is that there are vulnerabilities in the demographics we have, where because generally we seem to think that everybody generally, again, is okay, we don't seem to look at them, the vulnerable, because there are people who have sickle cell, who have some other ailment that make them more prone to the complications if they get infected. And that is where we tend to have more of the deaths. And it's a global thing. So if somebody has diabetes, somebody is overweight, which also has a resultant effect because you're overweight because of the complications, then we need to be taking a better look at it. And that's where we need the medical people to be speaking. It looks like now we've left all the talking on COVID to the politicians to be doing the communication, but I don't know. You call them, and then they don't want to be the people to be at the forefront. Because
sometimes they are targeted. It's like, you're talking too much, you're exposing us. Well, I'll come back and do the Business and Financial Times. Roland's got the custodian and some other papers, but let's welcome Gifty up here.
Good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Mama V and Roland. What's up?
Charlie, we did.
We did for ya.
You look good.
What can we serve you this morning, Gifty?
Say that again.
What can we serve you? We've got tea, coffee, we've got cocoa.
Money is fine. Money is fine.
Do you hear what I said? I said tea, coffee, cocoa. You said money.
I know. You're telling me what you have. I'm telling you what I want.
Roland, you said me, I'm hard. You heard from Gifty. You're quiet.
I think the two of you are the same.
I have the Daily Dispatch newspaper.
Please go ahead.
Roland,
I know.
I don't want you to lose any of the minutes you need to do the dedication. So
oh, I'm done. I'm done. Michael Abedu of Our Lady of Grace Hospital.
The Daily Dispatch newspaper has a banner headline: Professor Opoku-Agyeman won't be a walkover for Bawumia, according to a strategist. That's what the paper says. The story is on page 12. And beneath that, you have towards 2020 elections, John Mahama's 21 promises so far. The story is on page 2. And it comes with actually a picture of President Mahama in 2016 when he went to Perez Chapel, it looks like. If I remember that picture right. And then Winneba High Court quashes UEW Pro Vice Chancellor elections. That story is on page 11. I'm going to take you to the inside pages of the Dispatch. Full details of Supreme Court's judgment on NDC versus EC. You have the details there. You want to grab it for just 3 CDs and take a look. Highlight of the 2020 mid-year review budget statement. They're reporting on that as well. And President Akufo-Addo's 14th address to the nation on COVID-19 and the measures. So that also is there. So it looks like just deliberately presenting details of those stories. Then Primpack condemns attempts to stifle media freedom and independence. That's about all I have for the Dispatch newspaper. I'll go through the Statesman. Statesman banner headline: 82 financial institutions collapsed under Mahama. And you have a picture of the former president, and with no payments to affected customers. Story is on page 2. Beneath that, you have President Akufo-Addo commissioning the water project. 106,842 residents benefit from Nalerugu water project. and 3 students on scholarship to India. Make Ghana proud. Very good indeed, isn't it? Let's see what else I have on the Statesman. Okay, back page, Statesman. LMA Awards, Liverpool's Jurgen Klopp named Manager of the Year, and Andrew Ayew tipped to lead Ghana to AFCON glory. Is that so? Okay. I do have the daily guide. I think I'll be able to end with the daily guide. Daily Guide comes with the banner headline, Kafaba chief arrested over witch killing. And I like the prominence that the Daily Guide is giving to this particular story. And then it comes with that picture. Beneath that, you have Nairi endorses 4 more for Nana. Oh, is that so? That story is on page 6. And 82 financial institutions collapsed under NDC. See story also on page 3. It looks like the Statesman and the Daily Guide on a particular tangent with the Mahama story. And Volta Region Minister defends COVID-19 measures. He says he's recovered from COVID-19 himself. And then up on top of the banner headline, you have first timers swarm voter register. Page 14 has that story. So it looks like more of the young people who are now turning 18 wanting to register. Then you have a picture of the Kafaba chief, Seydou Yaya. And then you have a victim, the victim being assaulted by Hajia. Is it Filipina? Okay, I can't really see that. And then we have a picture of a Kia Dente. Looks like a noble woman. It still hurts me so much to look at her picture. I mean, I can't even really look at the story. May his soul rest in peace. I think that will be about all that I have for by way of the newspapers that Echo managed to pull through.
Okay, great. Roland will do the Custodian, the Business and Financial Times. I think one more paper you have.
Okay, so we have the Custodian. And the Custodian has on the front page, pursue killers of 90-year-old lady, Akufo-Addo to police. This is a good call because it's been overwhelming what the call is. Akufo-Addo fulfilled 2016 promises in Nalrugu, Yape, water projects commissioned. Police soldiers not doing MPP's bidding, the Interior Minister is correcting. And we all do know where that is emanating from the rants of the last NDC press conference I was convened. Ghana to have positive economic growth under MPP, Dr. Mark Osayasibe. There was an interaction he had with Evans Mensah. There was some key questions were posed to him that, look, Charlie, you wanted to be minister. They don't give you, so you may worry. So, Charlie, even though he's no more going to be a member of parliament.
In time will come.
Yeah, in time will come. True. Now,
you have to be properly affiliated. You have to be within a certain rank.
Yeah. So he's not yet a general.
even when you're part of a ruling government, you have to belong.
Yeah, true. better luck next time. The Business and Financial Times has a story, and I thought that, look, all of us need to take a look at it. MFIs, that's microfinance institution survival is hanging in the balance, apparently, as COVID-19 also disrupts trade because they tend to serve a certain segment of the markets, the lower segment, market women, those who do the tabletop trading, etc. They provide funding for them and provide some sort of packages. And because that sector of the economy has been badly affected, they also are suffering. But we also do know that the Akufo-Addo-led government has been able to provide some stimulus packages. This also more comprehensive in the last media review and supplementary one as well. And this is on the front page of the Business and Financial Times. AGR also advocating flexibility with 2 billion Ghana cedi guarantee scheme, says it should not be subjected to cumbersome banking appraisals. All right, Mama V, I think I'm done.
Okay. So I promise a bit of details. So this story on the University of Education, I'm picking from the Finder newspaper on page 4. It says the Winneba High Court has quashed the election held to choose a pro-vice chancellor of the University of Education, Winneba, on November 21, 2019. This case is simply not going away. Remember that lecturer, former UTAC president, Dr. Frimpong Ketri Duku, sued the University of Education, Winneba, over the processes for the election of a pro-vice chancellor. His lawyer, Afenyo Marking, you know, in that suit, they had described the process of the election as discriminatory and illegal. So the courts, presided over by Justice Abuaje Tanov, was further ordered for an immediate conduct of fresh elections for the pro-vice chancellor position. Contrary to the university's statutes, Reverend Father Professor Anthony Afobroning made a nomination which led to the election of Dr. Andy Ofori Crying as a candidate for the pro-VC elections. Winneba is back in the news, still on their issues. It doesn't seem to end, so we're still on it. With the court's decision yesterday, you can grab the paper and read the rest of it. I also promised a bit about the NCA story in the Daily Graphic newspaper, Roland and Gifty. So I'm just going to page 20 real quickly and bring a bit of that story. And then, Gifty, you can come through with what you're picking and highlighting on this morning before we do myjoyonline.com. All right, so this is page 20. It says a legal action by mobile network operator MTN challenging the processes that led to it's being classified by the National Communications Authority as a significant market player in the telecommunication industry has commenced at the Commercial Division of the Accra High Court. MTN is in court with a judicial review application urging the court to quash the NCA's decision with an argument that the regulator failed to give it a hearing before classifying it as an SMP. The NCA, however, insists in its affidavits in opposition to the application that at all material times MTN was aware and participated in the process that led to it being classified as an SMP. So all those who reacted on social media based on that comments, I guess you have to be following this issue. It's extensively reported on page 20 in the graphic. You can also grab the paper. Gifty?
Yes, Bomavi. It's interesting the telecoms, industry and what's happening within it. I've not really followed it through and through, so I may not be able to share a lot of perspective on that. But anything that seeks to give customers better, value for their money, I think is in the right direction. Otherwise, I'm very much excited that most of the newspapers are bringing back the story about Equiadente in the news. It's refreshing that the president is speaking about it. That said, yesterday, Amnesty International was pretty unhappy about the setup of a foundation without prior agreement or arrangement with the family of this woman. So they said that they went to visit this woman, her family, and they all said that no government official. When it happened over the weekend, we had a lot of calls. The Ministry of Gender, the Minister of Gender and Social Protection was talking a lot. They went to the family house and they said no government official has even showed up, to ask them anything. None of the representatives within the region, nobody has come. Nobody has talked to them about the setting up of a new foundation or of a foundation in her name. And it was just announced by the president and by the regional minister as well. And Amnesty International was saying, and I agree, was saying that you can't do that. You need the permission of someone's family at least before you can announce a foundation in the person's name. First of all, you can't be on radio talking and sympathizing and condemning when you have not even shown so much a concern as to visit the family and to at least commiserate with them. And they also raised a very important point, Mama V and Roland, that the police station, I think the police officers around this area, Kafaba, they are ill-resourced. And so one of the reasons why Amnesty International believes they could not arrest the chief or anybody involved in this was because they were afraid. And the number of people in the community can overwhelm the police. So the chief, for example, had to be arrested all the way in Damango, which is very far away from Kafaba, apparently. So it's like they are also calling on the IGP to create or to support the police station in Kafaba. Because if anybody had even attempted to save this woman, they probably would have been lynched. Because you saw the number of people who were around. It looks like everybody in the community was in on this, and nobody, even if you had good intentions, wanted to save her, could have, because the possibilities that everybody else would descend on you was high. So Amnesty International is calling on the IGP to bring in, some support for the police in that area. And I agree completely. This is so important and necessary. Yeah. But it's good that we are discussing this. People are learning, they are watching, and seeing that You can't do this and just get away with it.
Absolutely. Roland, any story?
Yeah, there is a story about how we need to make sure the AGI, which is advocating for flexibility for a 2 billion Ghana cedi fund, has been made available to the banks for them to be able to access, to make it flexible. And I'm saying this because we've had a number of stimulus packages that has been given to businesses. The first 600 million, that also dovetails into 1.2. That was first sent to Parliament for approval back in April by the Finance Minister. It's supposed to target the businesses. Now this time, we even have moved forward. We want to set up a 3.5-year fund that is supposed to be yielding 100 billion. And I think that if we want the businesses to resurrect within this period because of the effect of COVID, then sometimes we need to take a look at the processes that they go through before they access the funding. You know, before the financial crisis happened, or the effect that we had with the collapse of the bank, we had the local banks taking a lot of the fall and not being too rigorous with the processes. Of course, we have difficulties with payments and recoveries. And so we have a lot of the percentages as far as the non-performing loans are concerned. But we need to make it not easier, but more flexible for local businesses to be able to access the funding or funding at various banks.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if we don't develop our own, it becomes difficult for us to say when the borders are open, they can't compete. Because immediately the borders are open, we have to be realistic. The Ghanaian mindset will rotate back to comparing how good a package is to the other. And if packaging is not good, definitely no consumer would want to buy.
Yeah.
And we have to be realistic. This is the time we have to take advantage, but we also need to provide the funding for them.
Absolutely. Let's spend the last minute that we have on myjoyonline.com, and our lead story on myjoyonline.com you'd find when we take you to the page right about now is on Daniel Domalovo, who yesterday, as he's on leave, decided to go to his office, but realized that the key he had could not open the lock because apparently it had been changed. Lots of details on myjoyonline.com. Remember, his initial leave days was even increased further to 167. But later today, there is a case in courts. The Supreme Court will make a ruling on this case that the directive by the president is inconsistent with, as they say, the letter and spirit of the Constitution. That case will be heard by the Supreme Court today. We'll bring you details of that. Professor Stephen Asari is arguing that the acting Auditor General has not taken the oath of the Auditor General, cannot be referred to as acting in that position when there is a substantive Attorney General. And then, of course, changing locks to Auditor General Domalovo's office is ridiculous. That's according to Dr. Pomponi Kojo-Asante of the CDD. Rawlings did not discuss Nana Konaidu's presidential interest, hence her loss, according to Mr. Hoy, who spoke to Kojo Yankson yesterday. I sidestepped Mohammed's running mates' role to ensure generational transition. The ever-intelligent Kwesi Boche there. Okay, Attorney General urges Parliament to pass Conduct of Public Officers Bill 2018. But even if they pass this one, you and I will not know what is contained in it, would we?
Yeah, we can always find out. So.
Yeah? All right, there are plenty more stories on myjoyonline.com.
All right, so we have to take a break. And Gifty, thank you for joining us this morning. We'll see you later in the day. We're taking a break. We'll be right back with sports. Well, we have to bring you AM Business. It's always brought to you by EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank. And you may have noticed that upon all the havoc wreaked on global economies by coronavirus, one emerging a strong sector immune to the deadly pandemic is financial technology and also e-commerce. Now, millions of businesses scramble for a safer haven in the tech space, and government has also put in emergency measures to ensure their sustenance by reducing the communication service tax from 9% to 5%. And this edition of AM Business, some techpreneurs engage my colleague Charles Aite on business growth and profits in these uncertain times.
Clicks and buttons, the new normal for thousands of Ghanaian entrepreneurs making it big on the internet. Call it a new age of business. Technology and mobile telephony have birthed a formidable niche economy for e-commerce and financial technology, raking in billions of cedis in revenue. The coronavirus pandemic may have disrupted world economies and streams of income, but not for the fintech and e-commerce space. I've come to meet Dr. Jihadi Osebonsu, Chief Executive and co-founder of TechLoft. For him, the impact of the pandemic has been bittersweet. Before COVID-19, Dr. Jihadi's office was filled with app developers imprinting their digital footprints on payment solutions in Ghana. Things are no longer the same.
Pre-COVID, as you can see, there's nobody in the office, right? But pre-COVID, the office was quite busy, a lot of developers. And because we're a startup, you get a lot of developers coming in and leaving, right? Going on to different companies, but you get a lot of developers coming in and leaving. We had a lot of an active market activation team, right? We had teams that were constantly going out looking for agents, looking for churches. Now we cannot really do that. We have to rely a lot on referrals from people who are already using our systems. And then we also have to look at new business lines, especially because now everybody seems to be moving towards the future of work, right? And then the future of education. You need to look at more cloud-based technologies. What's emerging, what's coming? That's basically our focus now. Before COVID, we were also planning a lot of fundraising activities because we need to meet Bank of Ghana's new minimum capital requirements. And so most of those plans would have manifested this year, but COVID has affected travel. And I think for a lot of fintechs, we would have issues fundraising outside Ghana because of the travel ban. Because you can't take part in the Singapore Fintech Festival, you cannot take part in the Seamless event, you can't take part in Afro-Asia Fintech Festival.
Other digital services.
The Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, through the mid-year budget estimates, paid careful attention to this niche market. As more businesses migrate online, an emergency cushioning for the sustenance of online transactions is very key.
We will reduce the CST tax from 9% to 5% to reduce the cost of communication service to the consumer. As more and more people work remotely and utilize online services, we will count on the telcos to match this reduction in the CST by reducing their tariffs.
The communication service tax, CST, reduced from 9% to 5% means a whole lot for techpreneurs like Dr. Jihadi Osebonsu.
I don't know what data points they looked at, right? But if you look at how CST affects the digital space in Africa or in Ghana, right? It's CST the reduction is a positive move. And I say this because if you look at Africa, we spend basically about 1% of 1 gigabyte of data is equal to about 7.7% of an average African income, right? And so if the taxes come down, hopefully the telcos respond in like manner and then reduce the cost of data. Now this, you've seen COVID move a lot of people digital, right? A lot of people now want to be on different platforms, right? So this move, reducing CST should also, hopefully, impact in the number of people who actually get to use digital platforms.
Henry Kobler is the chief executive of iSolve Africa. He's recorded much success in his career as a developer. The e-commerce ecospace has given him room to provide useful technology for secured online payment in Ghana's growing middle-class market.
The tech industry is thriving. It's becoming better off in terms of how we bring in solutions into the market. I think that from our end, we've been successful at getting across some countries and even providing these solutions to people. Looking at the numbers, it's always getting on the rise and we're excited about it. But I think that COVID coming in sort of just gives us a bit of distraction. And I think that for us, it's also a good thing for us to look at a brighter side of what we're doing, because it opens a lot of avenues for us to explore. I think that we even had to go on remote way before the lockdown, and I think that it's been one of the amazing times which we've had working from home, exploring those avenues where we use most of the softwares which we deployed out there. Now, the most exciting part of it is when you find these solutions being an integral part of things which, whether covered or not, people get to be using. And so it makes it more exciting to find your product out there and being the solutions. I mean, if you look at Arenepa had almost sold close to almost around 3,000 face mask, nose mask out there, and it's through these platforms from over almost around 7 different manufacturers. And I mean, these guys are making some good money just using the platform as a channel to sell. And so I think that we on the tech side, it's more exciting for us because we find our product out there. But I think that it gives us a cause to reorient the way we think, whether there's a disease or not, to look at the digital age and how it's going to improve the livelihood of the ordinary Ghanaian.
Even though government has reduced the CST tax from 9 to 5%, he tells me reasons for more collaborations with regulators to ensure the sanity of fintechs.
If we're looking at our revenue models and then the expenditure models, we realize that, I mean, you could be making something out of what you're doing, but to be very honest, for us, I could tell you it takes almost around 37% of our expenditure in-house, because almost everything we're doing is data. I mean, we're always on Zoom calls, just using data for development, testing features on mobile applications, getting users on the applications. And the very funny thing is that if we look at even the data that's spent in terms of the traffic that hits these applications which we run in-house, you could realize that that's a lot of traffic. Quantifying all that to people's megabytes and gigabytes, you could realize that that's a lot of money going in. And I think that it doesn't just even affect just the point on data, but I mean, it just even goes as to TV, where I mean, it's so costly in terms of even advertisement on TV and all that. And I think that looking at us where it just takes almost around 37% of our expenditure. I mean, we go remote, almost every developer is spending close to excess of 150 gigabytes. That's a lot, you get the point. And if you're counting 17, 18 developers all in that fashion, that's a lot of data going. And I think that reducing it essentially makes a better way. But I think that it could be better because looking at what we want to achieve as a country, we're looking at a digital age, one which essentially helps to push most. I mean, everybody's just jumping on Zoom and all that. I think it will just be a norm from now, but what happens to that ideas? I mean, what happens to these what do you call it? There are a lot of applications, fintech companies and all that, every one of them trying to bring our product into the market. And if we're all not using data, I mean, that means that we have to get to USSD, which is not really technological in our advancement, where I think the Vice President makes a lot of mention to. If that's a vision of a country where we want to get digital, where other countries are now looking into the 5G space, I think that we have a long way to go, but we're actually at a very crucial stage where we do a lot of leapfrogging into the digital space, where we understand what China is doing, we understand what the US is doing. And so it makes it easier for us to leapfrog into the future. And so getting these taxes come down and getting the development, which internet is essentially a very huge infrastructure, getting these development across, I think that it makes better sense for our books. I might not necessarily need the government bringing down my taxes, but what I essentially can feel and use in terms of data, I think if it's a bit low for us, I think it's way to go.
Now, as government races to meet revenue targets and spread the tax net, there's been pressure to consider taxing e-commerce transactions and online activity. I put this to Dr. Jihadi Osebuntu, who argues that incentives must rather be created for techpreneurs to be tax conscious.
The second class, which is people who have an Instagram store, for example, he doesn't have a business, right? Now, that's where I think if you start looking at it from the perspective where you want to tax, you would lose them, right? Because ask yourself, it's so easy to open an Instagram store, but it's difficult to register a business, right? And so if you begin to think in the light of how easy it is to open an Instagram store, rather than go to Registrar General and open a business, it makes sense for people to keep wanting to go through Instagram stores, right? Ideally, I've not seen any entrepreneur who wouldn't want to have a registered business, right? And so I think rather than look at it from the angle where you're, it's like a vicious cycle, you want to tax them, find out why they prefer to open an Instagram store so easily, rather than, in addition to that, go to Registrar General to register a business. And I think if you look at it from that perspective, you may be able to come up with product policies that would encourage some of these self-owned Instagram stores, Facebook stores, WhatsApp business stores, and they actually go an extra step to create a logo, which means they are quite serious about what they are doing, right? They hope that it will lead to something bigger. And so if you find a way to engage them, I believe strongly that you wouldn't be shouting a lot about taxing, because you would already capture them within a certain tax net.
Thanks to financial technology, Ghanaians can now make mobile payments and money transfers, access loans and raise funds, as well as manage financial assets from mobile devices without entering a banking hall. But there are challenges. Ghana's fintech ecosystem is particularly unique and for brave, innovative and entrepreneurial minds, as Dr. Jihadi Osebontu of TechLoft and Henry Kobler of ISO of Africa. Now is a time for an unprecedented investment in Ghana's burgeoning ecospace of financial technology and e-commerce. I'm Charles Aite for Joy Business.
Great insight into the world of fintech and e-commerce and what portends for the industry, not only within coronavirus, but post the pandemic. Well, I hope that we've had some lessons to learn. But we need more education. We will be touching base on the subject. It's now dominating the discussion platforms, and it's about the Auditor General, who has now gone on leave, and so his deputy is in acting capacity. And just like we all do when we're on leave, sometimes you want to pop in, either because you're stressed at home or wherever you're relaxing or you miss work, you pop in and you want to test whether the office door is working. He did just on Tuesday, just didn't work. Apparently, those he left behind, his own office, had changed the locks.
There's no need for trying.
Yeah, but the key cannot even enter.
It's a different.
How do you see that? It was flat like this.
Yeah, so
and they changed it to this one. So that is fine.
There's no need for trying.
Yeah, but the key cannot even enter.
It's a different.
How do you see that? It was flat like this.
Yeah, so
and they changed it to this one. So that is fine.
There's no need for trying.
Yeah, but the key cannot even enter.
It's a different.
How do you see that? It was flat like this.
Yeah, so
and they changed it to this one. So that is fine.
There's no need for trying.
Yeah, but the key cannot even enter.
It's a different.
How do you see that? It was flat like this.
Yeah, so
and they changed it to this one. So that is fine.
Well, so that's what transpired. It dominated discussions on Joy FM and also Joy News right here. Evans Mensah had an interaction with Kuja Asante of CDD, and just 12 hours on the new development that we also want to apprise you of. We'll do that, and it's all because of these related matters, talking about the independence of the Auditor General And this very action, how that could set some bad precedents for the future, or will it not? It's a big question that we all need to grab a cheese and wait as we have this discussion. But before we do that, look, let's make sure that we're in the right stead. So Mama Bioso Abuaje also will be talking about the mental state and mental capacity, or whether we have contravened juvenile laws in our country in prosecuting offenders. And we know we have an act, we also have a Children's Act, etc. But beside that, there's a bigger conversation, and this is related to the Judicial Senior High Technical School issue, where an assistant headmaster decided to lock a group of students he suspected to have stolen. And subsequently, one attempted suicide. And after they were locked and now released, etc., one has also agreed that he was a culprit in that suspicious case subsequently. But it speaks to a broader issue about how you manage young people, juvenile, the mental state, etc. We'll talk about it. But let's get on to the streams and speak to Inusa Husseini. Inusa Husseini is a former minister, but also current minister, member of parliament for Tamale Central, and speaks volumes on issues. Mama Bioso Abuaje's bona fide friend. Me too, me too. Me too movement. And Mama, we do have Mr. Inusa Husseini.
We do. Mr. Husseini, we see you there. Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and how are you?
We're all good.
Great. So we've called you on the back of this Domalovo issue where he is on leave, on a compulsory leave. We know the days were extended from initial days that we all thought, well, that was what had accrued. Now he's on a 167 leave days. But he passed through his office yesterday only to discover that the locks had been changed. You've been following the story as well. What's unusual about what is happening to the Auditor General?
Well, thank you so very much, Mama V and Roland. There are many things unusual with the way the Auditor General is being treated. The first obvious thing is that the Auditor General, obviously being a public officer, is entitled to leave. But where the Auditor General the leave, they leave. And so for a president of a country to direct an Auditor General to take an accumulated leave is wrong. It's wrong by practice, convention, and by the law. Two, the Constitution specifically says that the Auditor General nobody shall interfere into the performance or functions of the Auditor General during the performance of those functions. But here we have a case where it's wrong. Thirdly, the Auditor General has not been fired. He's been asked to go and leave. His office is still his office. He can be an acting Auditor General. But that being so, where an acting Auditor General is appointed, that Auditor General acts in his stead until he returns to work. So how come, or where lies the changing of the locks of the office of the Auditor General? Why should that be changed? Because that is still his office. That is still his office. And so the Auditor General has not, when he was asked to go on leave, obeyed the president, went on leave, but challenged the decision. I have not read or come across an instance where the Auditor General has returned to office and thereby compelling his removal, forceful removal from office. So for anybody to go change the locks of the Auditor General willfully is capricious and very ill-advised.
What's your interpretation of that action?
Again?
I'm asking for your interpretation of that action. I mean, it's almost like you're not needed here.
The interpretation is very clear. The Auditor General is not wanted. Is not wanted in the office. Whoever has directed the auditor, the persons to lock the Auditor General out of his office is sending a clear message to the Auditor General that he is not wanted. That is the clearest interpretation that you can put on it. Because there is no rule or requirement that requires or stipulates that when the person goes on leave, his office has to be barricaded. There is no rule like that. And for anybody to do that is to act willfully, intentionally, removing the Auditor General from office. And this is very capricious.
So,
it's whimsical.
Mr. Fuseni, what can we do about it, knowing that the creation of that office,
say the list.
The creation of that office is one that has been created by the Constitution. You and I have a responsibility, the people of Ghana. You are a member of Parliament. You sit on the Constitutional Legal Affairs Committee of Parliament. What can we do in the face of this? There are other issues in courts with regards to the Auditor General, but particularly with this issue of he goes back to his office whilst he's on leave and realizes that the locks are changed. What can we do to protect that office?
The first thing that we can do to protect that office is what we are doing. Talking about the wanton disregard for law and procedure. That's the first thing we are doing. And that is commendable. Because if we refuse to speak against wrongs perpetuated against public bodies, no matter how the public officer is viewed in the eyes of government, then government will become more dictatorial, more tyrannical, and more arbitrary. And when the government becomes dictatorial and tyrannical, it impacts negatively on our attempt to install for ourselves democratic governments to be ruled in accordance with the Constitution and the laws of the country. And that is why we have to speak against it. It's a very, very sorry development. It's unfortunate that the president is presiding over a country where this level of lawlessness can be perpetuated against public officers. It's very unfortunate.
I wonder though.
Two, the least opportunity I have in Parliament, I will make a statement. But I know that a statement of that nature will have to be, first of all, admitted by the Speaker. If the Speaker fails, refuses, or neglects to accept such a statement, we will have to speak to the media. We will also have to build a body of consensus by good people, good thinking people of this country to rise against the actions of the executive in locking up the office of the Auditor General.
Mr. Fuseni,
thirdly,
yes.
Thirdly, we have to support him, and support the action in court to ensure that the proper thing is done.
Mr. Fuseni, hang in there for me. I've got one more question for you, but let me bring our court correspondent, Joseph Akable, who will give us an update in terms of the cases in courts in relation to the Auditor General. Joseph Akable, thanks for joining us. Bring us up to speed. How many cases are in court?
And so there are two major ones. The first one relates to this issue of accumulated leave, which Mr. Fuseni is speaking about. In fact, today the Attorney General's office has filed some documents and will be making oral arguments to that effect. The first issue has to do with a request for injunction filed by Professor Stephen Asari, is asking that the court restrains Mr. Epiamo Esiedu, who was appointed by the president per that letter that came from the presidency as the acting Auditor General. They are asking that he is restrained from acting as the acting Auditor General. They also asking that the leave, Mr. Domelovo, is restrained also from proceeding on that leave that he has been asked to proceed on. And so that is the injunction issue that the court would have to hear. The AG's office, the documents that we have seen, are opposed to the injunction and will be arguing that granting of the injunction will affect the work of the office. They are expected to argue per the documents we have cited that there have been occasions where the Auditor General is not around, that the deputy has acted in his stead and has actually appeared before various committees in Parliament, sometimes the Public Accounts Committee, to perform those functions. And so Deputy AG Godfrey Deboadam will be telling the court that granting such an injunction will mean that the office will not be able to function until this particular matter is resolved. The second request per the documents that have been filed by the AG's office has to do with asking the court to strike out the Auditor General and Johnson Equiamo Esiedu, who is the acting Auditor General, as defendants in this particular rate. Now, that argument that will be made, if it is granted by the court, will mean that the Attorney General, who is defending the action of the presidency in this particular matter, will now be defending the Auditor General, who is a victim of the leave issue, and the Deputy Auditor General, who has been asked to act as the acting Auditor General, who is the beneficiary of this particular action. It means that he will be the only one to be defending this particular matter against Professor Asari's lawyers. And so it's an issue that Professor Asari's lawyers intend to oppose and urge the court to allow those two others to remain defendants in this particular case. And so that is it in terms of one of the cases. There's another case that was filed by a private legal practitioner, Isaac Obafor Asari, and that relates to questions about the extent of independence of the Office of the Auditor General. We filed that case at the height of the disagreement between the Auditor General, the Audit Service Board, and the Auditor General over transfer of some staff that have been carried out by the Auditor General. And so that matter is also due to be heard today. And so those are the major issues relating to the Auditor General's office that is to be heard at the Supreme Court this morning.
Okay, so how many cases are being heard today again, Joseph?
And so there are two of them relating to the Auditor General.
Okay. All right, Joseph. We will wait for you to fill us in. We know you do a fantastic job with giving us updates from the court. Trust Joseph Akable, our court correspondent, who bring us up to speed. We will give you the updates on News Desk later this morning. Joseph, thank you very much. Mr. Fuseni, I still have you with us. I just wanted to ask, because you're attributing this locking up to the executive, and I wonder, will the president know about this changing of law?
Well, the constitutional framework that we have put in place clearly identifies three arms of government. Three arms of government. The first arm of government is the legislature. The second arm of government is the executive. And the third arm of government is the judiciary. The Constitution makes it clear in Article 58 of the Constitution, that is the 1992 Constitution, that executive authority vests in the executive. Executive authority has been defined in the Constitution in the interpretation section to mean the power with which government acts. When you read Article 58 and 296 of the Constitution together, 296 or 295, the interpretation section of the Constitution together, you will come to one conclusion, that any action that is executive in nature, executory in nature, derives from the power of the president. And the president cannot pretend to know that actions are being taken in his name. And so this is a matter of public notice, public knowledge. People have gotten to know. The president, it was, who wrote to the Auditor General to proceed on accumulated leave. The president, it was, who was written to through his secretary, challenging the decision direct the Auditor General to proceed on leave. The President responded by increasing the number of days of the Auditor General in the issue of his accumulated leave. And so the President cannot, by any stretch of imagination, say that he is unaware that there is boiling controversy as to whether or not the Auditor General can proceed on leave as directed by the President, or can a President direct the Auditor General, who is a creature of the Constitution, to proceed on leave. So the blame for all what is happening must be put squarely at the doorstep of the President.
Are these actions, finally, Mr. Hussaini, is this towards the office itself or towards the man who occupies the position? Hello, Mr. Hussaini?
Yes, somebody is trying to call in, but I can hear you now.
Okay, great. I was just asking if what is happening, in effect, is towards the office itself or the gentleman who occupies the position.
We don't have a gentleman occupying an office. The Constitution creates an office of the Auditor General. And so that is an office. And the Constitution insulates that office from any interference from any person or authority. And that is the integrity of that office that we are fighting to establish. Never mind that the President doesn't like the face of the Mluvu, or a President might not like the face of anybody who occupies that office. Our argument is that that office is a creature of the Constitution, and the Constitution insulates that office from manipulation. Rightly so, because the fight against corruption and corrupt practices will be won if you have an independent Auditor General who will scrutinize the expenditure of the executive as approved by Parliament and hold them accountable for such expenditures. And we all know that the beginning of this problem is a challenge executive, the Auditor General. But that is what the fight against corruption, or the fight to prevent corruption or stop corruption, entails. That people must be prepared to hold the executive arm of government accountable. Not only the executive arm of government, the legislative arm of government, the judicial arm of government, and all bodies that are created by the Constitution and that use public funds.
Okay, all right.
So for us, it is important, if we are passing right to information, we are passing laws like establishing institutions like special prosecutor. Yesterday, we spoke about the Conduct of Public Officers Bill. Many sunshine legislations are coming. They can only complement the anti-corruption institutions that are already in existence. And if we are taking action.
All right, Mr. Hussaini there, but I think you all...
That is soon in this... All
right. Mr. Hussaini, unfortunately, the network will not allow us to conclude, but I guess the point has well been made. We really appreciate your contribution. He's on the, he's actually the ranking member of the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee of Parliament. Well, on the back of this, we know that the CDD has spoken. The Director of Advocacy and Policy Engagement at the Center, Dr. Kojo Asante, says the action in terms of changing the locks to the Auditor General's office is appalling and ridiculous. We'll bring you the updates from courts later this morning. But let's move on to another matter. Roland Walker. This one is on our hearts. Well, just like the one that we've discussed, but this has young people at the center. And we did condemn the action, talked about it initially when it happened, but there's an update, Roland?
Yes, definitely. We do know that the update is that one of the students did admit to stealing, of course charged, but there's a bigger issue about infringement on the rights of these young people, and then also the mental health of the children. And Mamavi, we also have to say that, well, a fine of some 1,200 and a signing of a bond of good behavior for 12 months was also signed by that very student. As Erasto Asaridonko also did indicate in an earlier report that other students also accused of stealing attempted suicide in the process. But look, let's bring you more updates as we recap the story.
It was court day today here at the Jabin Circuit Court, and we had two people appearing before the court, presided over by Her Ladyship Veronique Praba Tete. And these two people involved one, a student of the school, who together with another colleague were alleged to have scaled the wall of the school and stolen the electric stabilizer of the school. Now, if you remember, these two students were allegedly held by the assistant headmaster in his office overnight, leading to one of them trying to take his own life. Now, appearing before the court today, Gajesberg Asameti, an 18-year-old student, pleaded not guilty to charges of unlawful entry, but pleaded guilty with explanation to conspiracy to commit crime. And after his explanation that they did not intend to steal the electric stabilizer, the judge herself entered a not guilty plea on his behalf. Now he pleaded guilty to another charge of stealing the school's electric stabilizer, and he was convicted on that count to spend a day in jail and pay an amount of 1,200 Ghana cedis, and he's also to sign a bond of good behavior for 12 months. Now, second to appear before Her Ladyship was the assistant headmaster of the Judicial Technical School, Apia Albert Kofi. Now, he was charged with assault. The court explained to him that when the students were arrested by the taxi driver and handed over to him, he allegedly slapped the two of them before locking them up in the office. And he also faces charges of unlawful imprisonment and abetment to commit crime, to wit, suicide, attempted suicide. And they explained to him that indeed he left harmful substances in his office, and knowing very well that he had harmful substances in his office, he locked the students up in there overnight, leading to one of them drinking detergent, leading to his hospitalization. He pleaded not guilty to all the three charges, and he has been granted bail of 5,000 Ghana cedis with one surety to appear before the court again next month. Now, the other student who attempted suicide whilst in custody in the office of the assistant headmaster could not come to court today. His father came to court with a medical report from the Judicial Government Hospital indicating that he has been hospitalized. And so he faces a charge of attempted suicide, and the case has been adjourned to next month. Reporting for Joy News, Erastus Asaridonko, Kumasi.
Well, and as we begin the discussion, we also do know that Erastus will be joining us to enable us tease out what's the latest as far as this case is. But we have to speak broadly to the conversation, Mama V.
Yes, we do. Dr. Akwesio says the CEO of the Mental Health Authority, Dr. Ruth Owusu-Entwi, is head psychiatry department, Komfo-Anokye Teaching Hospital, vice president of the Ghana Psychiatrists Association. We've got Christian Mom Hesse, and he is a lawyer. And of course, our own Erastus Asaridonko giving us that court report, also joining us. Good morning to all of you. Let me hear you say good morning back to me if you can hear me.
Good morning.
Good to have you.
Thank you.
Hopefully you've been following this story from the beginning. This story that Erastus broke for us here at Joy News about 2 students who were accused initially of stealing. They were locked up in an office overnight. One person ended up drinking a substance that, which later on we were told he had tried to commit suicide. What do you make of what has happened so far from the psychiatry point of view?
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. Well, what we must understand is that suicide behavior, when I say suicide behavior, having the suicidal ideations, that means thinking about suicide, planning about suicide, and actually attempting suicide is very high in the adolescent. Actually, a study has been done among senior high students by one Professor Safo, and it's been published. Well, it was in a team, a group published in 2017, that this kind of risk or behavior was found to be very prominent among SHS students. One of the reasons that has been identified in this group as a risk factor is psychological and pain, or to escape shame in this particular group of people. And so when the headmaster decided that I needed to take an action, if he had information or he had how would I even put, if he thought about suicide, then he would have put measures in place and probably not taken the step he took. He could have taken alternative steps, that maybe go to your dormitory, I'll put you in charge of your senior prefect or your dorm prefect, then you come back in the morning, we will deal with this, and make them understand that what they have done is wrong and the reason why they should receive some form of punishment for it and all that. But the humiliation that went with the process would make a young person decide that I will not live to face the shame that awaits me in the morning. And so it shows that by and by, as people who live with an age group called the adolescent, or people who work with this age group, our knowledge about suicide is still very low, and especially for an SHS assistant headmaster who did not think about it. And I'll not blame him, because the education about suicide is really on the low side in this country. But if he had a foreknowledge, then it would have clicked that even at least in his room or his office where he kept these children, he would have made sure that there is nothing there that they can use to harm themselves or they can use to attempt suicide. And so this story clearly brings to light how our knowledge, our information, our spread on information about suicide is very low in this country. It's not just among people who work with SHS students, but generally very low among Ghanaians in general.
So, Doc, let's take the suicide attempt out of the conversation. Let's talk about in terms of punishing a student by keeping them in an office overnight. What's wrong psychologically with that? Is there anything wrong with it?
Certainly, there is everything wrong with it. I would let the lawyer throw more light on the legal aspect. Legally, you cannot take the law into your own hands and lock somebody up that way. Lock them up, let them take off their clothes. I understand these young people were slapped even before they went through this ordeal and all that. So certainly the whole procedure was wrong. I am for discipline, but there are some disciplines, there are some forms of disciplines that eventually would be seen as an abuse. There's actually a thin line between discipline and abuse. If you don't have, if you don't take care, you easily cross the line from discipline to abuse. And so locking them up in an office, no bed, even if you are in prison, you have an opportunity to lie down on a bed and sleep. But locking them up, making them take their clothes, so being exposed to health hazards with all the kind of weather we are having now was totally not appropriate. And I think that alternative ways could have been employed in this situation. And I gave an example that these students could have been allowed to go back to their dormitory, and adolescents appreciate it when you have given them the reason why behind everything. Okay, so I am doing this because of so and so. You were caught scaling a wall in the possession of maybe a property that belongs to the school, blah, blah, blah. It is against the school rules. It is against the school ethics. It is late now. I'll put you in the care of your dormitory prefect or your house prefect. Make sure that you don't scale the wall again in the night. And in the morning, we will call you before the disciplinary committee. These are the measures that we would take, but we need to take them because we want it to serve probably as a deterrent to others. We want to make sure that you are of a good behavior. You explain all of these to the person, to the young person, so that they understand the reasons behind the actions you are taking. But simply locking them.
Okay, so Dr. Owusu-Enchi's network just frozen a little bit on us, but she's still with us. If you can hear me, ma'am, just stay with us. Let me bring into the conversation Dr. Akwesi Osei, who is the CEO of the Mental Health Authority, and then Mr. Christian Mam Hesse, who is a lawyer. Let me start with the lawyer. I'll come to you. Dr. Akwesi Osei, okay, let me come to you. I don't quite have my lawyer on the line. Dr. Akwesi Osei, when the issue of the court updates came up yesterday, I just thought of you and the charge of attempted suicide and the punishment because a gentleman had failed, had not succeeded in committing suicide. Because you've done a lot of advocacy. We want this taken out of our books. And here we are today again with this same thing facing us. So I want to understand where you are, because you've been leading this fight. Where are we with this whole criminal issue of attempted suicide?
Listeners and viewers, as the case may be. Well, we haven't gone very far. A little progress, but not very far. What I mean by a little progress is that the last time you were at the parliament, and you may remember some time back, the issue came, you were at a radio station prior to that with one of the parliamentarians, and the issue of suicide and attempted suicide and criminalization came up. So the MP was convinced by an argument that it should be decriminalized. So he promised to take it up to Parliament. He actually did. He went to Parliament, he made a statement, and that created an uproar with both majority and minority leaders saying that, no, we cannot agree to the decriminalization. We followed up and met them one-on-one. We didn't meet the majority leader, but we met the minority leader, and he agreed eventually to our point that, yes, it should be decriminalized. And that is where we go to, that we were to follow up with a submission to him for him now to present to Parliament. That has not been done yet, the COVID issues and other things. But at least we've now got him to agree that, and not only him, when we were coming out, we met with a number of parliamentarians. And we sold, if you like, we sold our idea to them, and they all bought it. So We've made a little progress along that line, but it now needs to come to the floor for them to agree, and in fact, for the Attorney General now to amend that aspect of the law.
So, do we consider this young man as a criminal or a patient?
As far as I'm concerned, well, there are two aspects. Well, initially, what took him to, at least his colleague, to the court was the criminal aspect, the theft. But then, before he himself could go to court, he had attempted suicide. I thought he was being taken to court for the theft. But one of your sister stations yesterday interviewed them, and it's like it's not for the theft per se, but for the attempted suicide. If that is so, it's unfortunate. I think he should be seen as a patient in this matter. After the issue of attempted suicide and whatever was causing the attempt, after that has been settled, then they can go back to the theft case if they want to. But for the attempted suicide, for them to take him to court because it's attempting suicide, then it means we still are not appreciating the point that many of the causes are actually coming from mental issues. Indeed, in this boy's case, what seems to me to be at the bottom of it is an acute stress reaction. The fact that he has been involved in this matter and the embarrassment that faces him, a possibility of going to court and being jailed, all that precipitated an acute stress reaction in him, for which, on impulse, he decided to take his life. It's a mental health issue, and it should be treated as such. I also expect that when he went to the hospital, again, I understand that when the case went to court, the medical report said he was somewhere. I suppose that the medical report will include the fact that he has a mental health issue that should be sorted out, in addition to whatever the effect of what he drank might have caused in his stomach or his stomach.
Is it wrong for people to interpret this as an acceptance of guilt?
Well, as I said, I'm not talking. You come again with the question.
So I'm just looking at, because, you know, this is mental health mixed up with legalities. And I'm just asking if the reaction in terms of attempting to commit suicide, avoiding, if you like, the shame as it's been interpreted, is some way of acceptance of guilt?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. There are many people, you and me and many others, if you are accused of something that you may not have done, the shame of it could precipitate any action, and that might not necessarily mean you are accepting guilt. So we cannot say it's an indication of an acceptance of guilt. The two should be separated.
So is there anything, can there be an intervention today with this matter? We know that it is still in court, but because you've done a lot of follow-ups trying to get this attempted suicide issue to be strictly mental, is there an intervention that can be done from your outfit?
Yes, and especially with my colleagues in Kumasi, and I got the tail end of your discussion with Dr. Hussein. So our colleagues in Kumasi, I'm sure they will take it up, and if the case in court is simply for the attempted suicide, we should be able to prevail upon them for him to be seen and treated for the mental health issue, underlying mental health issue, before, if they want to proceed with the theft case, which is a criminal issue, before that can be done. So yes, I'll prevail upon my colleagues, or I'll urge my colleagues in Kumasi to take it up.
Okay, we thank you for your time, Dr. Akwesi Osei, CEO of the Mental Health Authority, on this subject. He's been doing a lot of work trying to make attempted suicide strictly a mental health issue. Roland would engage our lawyer, Christian Mam Hesse.
And Mr. Mam Hesse, I do know, based on the work I've done with some NGOs in the past, that we do have a Juvenile Act. We also do have a Children's Act, and a general structure of the way we need to prosecute juveniles. Lay out the framework for us. If, let's say, we have juveniles who needed to be treated in the eyes of the law.
Basically, juveniles, juvenile, because of because they are minor, the Juvenile Act laid certain procedures within which prosecutions in that nature could be brought against them in certain situations. They are not ordinarily to be hauled before the court as it is done for people in majority, that's adults. And they are mostly heard in camera, and in certain situations their guardian ad litem or their parents are supposed to also be there in the prosecutions of that nature. In such prosecutions also, the policemen normally would not even wear their uniforms and all of that, just because the juveniles are seen as not in that majority age to face all that harsh and formal prosecutions or inquisitorial nature of the justice system.
Signatory to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and this has also been well couched to fit into the Juvenile Acts that we have and the way we tend to deal with so-called flouters of the law who fall in that category. In your estimation, how should the Ghana Education Service be dovetailing this in the way they administer children?
I mean, basically, when it comes to suicide and subsequently prosecution, I mean, where juveniles are involved, I would rather recommend that Ghana Education Service works more with the Mental Health Authority so that issues relating adolescents related to suicide would properly be harmonized and a proper legal framework would be couched out, especially more so that the legislative instrument for the Mental Health Act has not properly been put out. It has made some of these things more difficult because if a young chap attempts to commit suicide, it is basically because that person may be ill functioning in his mind. And if you look at the offenses under the Act 29, which talks about attempt to commit suicide, they put it as a misdemeanor, which one could serve up to 1 year imprisonment. Now, irrespective of whether the person was able to finish the act or not, makes it a preparatory one. But the most important thing is that when the country fails to look at the mental health in the country totally, it creates a problem for the whole country. You have the World Health Organization, which estimates that about 650,000 people in the country have severe mental disorders, and goes on to say that about 2.166 thousand people that are moderate and mild mental patients in the country. That puts it out that in the country that we live in, we have a certain decadence of mental issues, which has gone unchecked. And if you juxtapose it to the Disability Act, the definition under the Disability Act indicates that where somebody suffers from mental impairment suffices to be a disability, so that if that disability would ill function or cause the person not to function properly in society, just as to put his own life at danger, then it is a cause for us to worry.
Okay.
Putting one's life at danger would mean by taking steps to commit suicide. So that if I take steps to commit suicide, then why would the country, through its state protocols, commit such a person to prison term? So there is a certain conflict between the Act 29 and even the Disability Act, which indicates that such impairments create rights for the sick, that particular student, to have rights to mental health treatment, but not imprisonment. So these are some of the conflicts that we have. And it is strife now. We call on the president, we call on the legislature to have some of these things sorted out through the LI or amendments. Aside it, we can have individuals who would go to the Supreme Court and look at the rights under Chapter 5 vis-a-vis the Disability Act and then the Act 29 and see whether such conflicts in the law could cause the attempt to commit suicide under section 18 of Act 29 to be expunged, because in terms of modality and understanding of mental impairments, such things needs to be expunged out of the Act to make room for treatments of such mental impairments.
Well, I asked this question because I know that the police also were just following the law, and if you want to implement the full rigors of the law, it also means that you have to implement it appropriately. But we've been yes, so
there's a discretion. There's a discretion that comes in, so that if the police is to charge the juvenile with attempt to commit suicide, at that point in time, the prosecutor or the CID is fixed either to go through at the Disability Act, Section 59, which gives the definition. Either the police would go through the Disability Act and give the right to that juvenile to have mental treatment, or go through Act 29, Section 18, to have the child prosecuted. And because the CID is at that junction, he decides which one to take. And it becomes problematic when the Act, the Mental Health Act and the Disability Act stipulates how it should go when it comes to mental impairment. And you have the criminal jurisdiction, the criminal regime also indicating custodial sentence for it. So that is the conflict in the law, which ought to be rectified so that we have a harmonization of some of these things.
Okay, Chris Hesse, thank you for joining us. We'll let you go so that you can work on some of your expedient matters for the day. But we'll go back to our lead psychiatrist before we do, but Mamavi does. Erastus Asaridonko, our main reporter, has been on this beat from day one alongside his colleague. And Erastus, when you follow the case, up to the time that you're reporting the suicide and charges thereof that had been put on the student, how would you describe their state?
Well, when you look at especially the boy who drank the detergent, you could see clearly that this is a distraught person, and it shows all over him. And you could see his confusion when I interviewed him. And he told me personally that, well, at that point in time, he felt so ashamed of himself. He could not control the fact that the dad and mom who have struggled to raise him will hear that he has been accused of stealing the school stabilizer, which he never did. And so he couldn't bear all that. He told me that he started the act by trying to stab himself with a trophy in the headmaster's office, but it couldn't go through. And so the next moment he drank the detergent, hoping that it would take effect immediately to get rid of his problems. And so you could see a very confused person, even when he was brought home. When you are interviewing him, you could see that he's far away in thought. He's not himself. He's thinking about so many things at a particular time.
Erastus, how old is this? Is this the 17 or the 80-year-old?
This one is the 17-year-old.
The 17-year-old. So the 18-year-old who was jailed yesterday, it means that he went to jail yesterday, he will be released today, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Is he going to go back to school? Is the school going to accept him?
Looking at how the teachers, their demeanor yesterday in court, which to me looked as if they were happy that he has been incarcerated. I don't think he himself will want to go back to that school. That student, his father was telling me that I should help him move his child from that particular school to a different school. So clearly, these are not students who want to go back to that particular school again.
The assistant headmaster, though, his case has been adjourned. What did the court talk about? What did they expose? Somebody might be asking. The first one was speedily prosecuted. What's the issue with this assistant head teacher?
Well, so yesterday he appeared before the Jabin Circuit Court presided over by Veronique Prabat-Tete, and he was charged with one assault that the students claim that they were slapped severally by him before being locked up in the office. He was also charged with unlawful imprisonment, that he had no right to lock the students up in his office and overnight and leave them to go home. Abetment to commit crime, to wit, attempted suicide is the third charge. And they explained to him that he knew there were harmful substances in his office, and he exposed the children to that harmful substance by locking them up in his office for the student to drink that detergent. And so he, in a way, assisted the student to take his own life. He pleaded not guilty to all the charges. His lawyer was in court to seek bail for him. Bail was granted in the sum of 5,000 Ghana cedis with one surety, and the case will go into trial next month.
Okay, but Erastus, in your earlier interview with him, he had accepted responsibility. He said he indeed kept them in his office overnight, correct?
Yes, and to the extent that he did not mince words, told me that yes, he stripped them down to their boxes before locking them up in his office, and that his office is a very nice place. It has a ceiling fan and a sofa, and so he feels that they were comfortable.
Erastus, have you been able to gauge the mood of students?
You see, many of the students are telling us about ordeals they've gone through at the hands of this assistant headmaster, but none of them will want to go on record for fear that they might be victimized. But there are some of the teachers who are happy with the assistant headmaster's actions. Some of them told me yesterday that the students are very bad, and so it's only the assistant headmaster who can control them with some of these tactics. And if you've seen the videos that the Judicial has brought up, you could see some of these students crawling on their knees by the roadside. And this incident happened last year. Again, the assistant headmaster is seen in the video admitting that he asked them to crawl for eating at an inappropriate time. So the issues are plenty. Those that the students are raising about some of them being asked to scoop excreta, human excreta from the bush to the main toilet and all that. Some of these things, I think the Ghana Education Service needs to look into them.
Okay, just finally on the Ghana Education Service, because there's an administrative procedure also ongoing. Help us appreciate what the Ghana Education Service is also doing with regards to this matter.
I've been told by the regional director, Mrs. Mary Usu-Afriye, that they intend to set up a disciplinary committee and hold him before it. But then it goes through many channels or many procedures. They've initiated those procedures. And so at the appropriate time, they will give him a letter to appear before it. But meanwhile, they've asked him to step aside from his official duties as assistant headmaster.
Erastus Asari-Donkor, fantastic job.
Yeah, I wanted to ask one question.
Okay.
Do you know whether they were tried in a juvenile court?
Well, this is a circuit court, and if it's a juvenile court, I guess perhaps it will be held in camera, but it was held in an open court at the judicial circuit court with lots of people in attendance. So I think that's the answer to your question.
But did anybody raise issues with the procedure?
Nobody raised issues, and that's my concern, especially where they should have given the student a lawyer, or if he did not ask for one, they would have provided one for him, perhaps pro bono. He stood in the dock defending himself, and you could see the confusion with his explanation and all that, telling you clearly that he did not understand the procedures and even the charges that were preferred against him.
Also, he didn't have a lawyer.
He didn't have a lawyer. He was defending himself, and to some of the things that he pled against, you could see that his explanations, he did not know the impact of his explanation, and at a point in time, the judge himself had to enter a not guilty plea for him after he has explained himself. And so it tells you that with a lawyer, it would have made much difference.
Okay, Erastus, it looks like this is something that we have to pay particular attention to and get into the procedural matters in this case. We will definitely be returning to you, but thank you. Fantastic job that you've been doing for us. It helps us all appreciate this matter from the beginning when it broke. Let's go back to Dr. Ruth Owusu-Entry, Head of Psychiatry Department, Komfo-Anokye Teaching Hospital, Vice President, Ghana Psychiatrists Association. Just the final leg of this conversation, Doc. I don't know if you heard the CEO of the Mental Health Authority. There's some kind of intervention that can be made to bring the attention to the fact that this other student, this other boy, is going through some difficulties, and the charge right now should not be attempted suicide. What do you make of that suggestion?
Yes, I agree perfectly with my boss, Dr. Kwesi. I still cannot wrap my head around the fact that somebody was trying to die, was trying to take his life. Somebody was attempted to die by suicide and survived, and so must face the law for it. Of course, the law, or those who support this kind of practice, that suicide should be criminalized, say that it would, when you criminalize attempted suicide, it serves as a deterrent, and that people do not own their life. They belong to the state, and so they don't have the right to take their lives. I mean, these are some of the reasons why those who support this law say. But there are several reasons that we in the mental health field find to bring down this law, or to cancel this law. The fact that as we continue to criminalize attempted suicide, it serves to rather promote completed suicide. People will now decide that if I need to die by suicide, then I must make my plan work. I must make sure that I succeed. Because what betide me if I don't succeed? I get to face the law rather than get mental help for whatever distress I was going through. So making suicide attempt a criminal offense rather promotes suicide. Again, it prevents the government from putting funds even into the research of suicide. How would the government decide that I am putting funds into something that is supposed to be a criminal offense? Again, it prevents people from getting the right kind of help that they need for whatever underlying cause it is. Majority of people, almost, in fact, over 90% of people who attempt suicide usually have underlying mental health distress or mental health challenges. And if you just concentrate on punishing the person without finding out the underlying cause, then whatever mental challenge there was would be perpetuated. And I think that everybody in this country should stand up for this law to be repealed, for this law to be changed, and rather look at it as a means, as a channel of sending these people who attempt suicide automatically to a mental health facility to get the right kind of support and the right kind of help. Again, it boils down to the fact that everybody in the society should be able to identify very common risk factors for suicide in people and in each other so that we can provide support, because most people who want to attempt suicide give warning signs. Sometimes warning signs go on for as long as 2 years. They are posting things on their social media walls, and they are saying things like, I'm tired of life. They talk in metaphors that I'm traveling to a place, their attitude changed, they suddenly start drinking excessively, they start putting their house in order, talking to people that, oh, Charlie, one day if I'm not there, please take care of my kids for me, or I have hidden something here. One day if I'm not there, make sure you do A, B, C, D. And for your information, that one day would be the next day, because they have already planned to exit this world. Some of these common warning signs about suicide should be made known to everybody. And that is why mental health education should start as early as, even in our primary schools, give age-appropriate education about mental health for children to understand some of these situations, catch it early so that we can give the appropriate help.
Okay.
Attempted suicide should not be a criminal offense. It is rather promoting suicide in the country. The WHO has said that every 40 seconds, someone is dying of suicide. And if you count the number of 40 seconds in 1 hour, then lives are just being lost like that. And if there is one way to cut this number down, to cut this incidence on occurrence of suicide attempted down, why don't we do it? Why do we insist that we will continue to make it a criminal offense? I will take this medium, I'll use this medium to appeal to the powers that be. Let's just take a second look at this law. I know Mental Health Authority has fought. It's become a challenge, and the government, the judiciary should listen to us.
Well, Doc, thank you very much. And as you also represent the association, we want to plead with you, raise it on your platform. Let's see if there can be some intervention even whilst the processes still go on. If there's an appeal that you can make to the prosecutors in the Ashanti region so that this boy can be taken care of, we would really appreciate it.
Sure. That would be done.
Okay. All right. That's Dr. Ruth Owusu-Antwi, Head of Psychiatry Department, the Komfo Anokye Teaching Hospital, also Vice President of the Ghana Psychiatrists Association on this matter. The last leg of it will be had with the Executive Director, Amnesty International, Robert Akoto Amoafo, joins us. Good morning to you. I'm sure you've been following this issue in the Ashanti region. We're looking for intervention, so I wonder what Amnesty International can do to help.
Yes, thank you very much. One of the key things for us in this matter is ensuring the protection of children, and especially in a case where this involves a school. We think that it's important that we show as an example, because this is a unique case within our system, that this be an example, that we take care of this boy so that he doesn't get involved in another attempt again. It's important that we give the support needed, psychiatrists, social workers. I mean, that is one key thing that we continue advocating, that our social workers are giving the support so that they can provide every professional care that is needed for issues like this.
Now, this is Roland. I also co-host the show as well. Well, one of the key aspects of this case is not only the related mental health issues or complications, but also the matters of procedure, of trial, of juveniles. And we understand the ages of these young people are 18 and 17, but they were arraigned before a normal circuit court. That definitely is an infringement on their rights, is it not?
Since they are at the age of 18 and 17, for the 17-year-old, of course, we could take them through a juvenile process instead of a normal process. And for that matter, even because of their ages, they may not have to go to an adult cell. They're supposed to be put in a juvenile process, a juvenile cell, So, of course, yes, the issue of ensuring that we take care of our children, even through the justice system. I know some years ago, there was a policy that was put in place by the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection on juvenile justice. And it's important that when we set these policies in place, we implement them. We make sure that we take care of the children according to our policies. We have signed on to international protocols that say that we will protect our children, even through the justice system. And so for us at Amnesty, we still insist that children are taken through the children justice process, not an adult process, that they are not joined together with adults in the cells, because they may face some sort of danger that we cannot take them through. That is why I mentioned earlier the need for social workers to be involved immediately a child is arrested. Immediately a child is picked up from school, there is a need for the school to collaborate with social workers so that they can help them take this process through and ensure that the child's interest is at the best in this process, and not just the issue of getting them through the justice system or trying to just punish them, but to ensure that sometimes these children have other issues that needs to be looked at, and it is only if they are given the opportunity with a counselor or given the process with a social worker who works with children to support them in this light. So we call on the Ministry of Gender and Social Welfare Department to beef up their work and join this process. And like I mentioned, this should be an example for them so that we don't have this happening again. We don't want these issues to be isolated issues. We want a holistic solution to these issues so that we get these children not into this issue anymore. There are so many children behind bars. I know some years ago there was an attempt to get a public judgment where all children, any person who was put into jail when they were the age of a minor would be taken out of jail. Unfortunately, this case didn't go through, but we are believing that there's always an opportunity for a fresh start. So we are calling on the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection and the Social Welfare Department and the Ghana Education Service to get involved and get this issue resolved as soon as possible.
Well, thank you very much, Robert Akoto Amwafo. He is with Amnesty International. He is the boss, executive director for the Ghana chapter, and they have been preempting this and doing the advocacy alongside. And well, it's where we also say we have to open the phone lines and get all of you talking on this subject if we can, and the lines will be put on the screens for you so that you get to know whether you also want to make a contribution. But more so, let's say you have a child or you're a guardian, a parent, and you're even a young person yourself, you find yourself associated with this very incident. What can you say about it? We have the lines 03022116912. You can also get it very much interactive on our Facebook page, Join News on TV, through our Twitter handle as well, Join News on TV, and let us know what you think. This is very bizarre about an issue that confronts every parent, school administrator, because there may not be a proper laid-down procedure by way of what the norm is, even though the structures will be available. How do administrators, teachers tend to exhibit means of discretion and circumspection when they find themselves? Frank is calling us. Frank, where are you calling us from? Frank, good morning to you.
Good morning, Rose.
Yeah. Frankie, where are you calling from?
From Mampong.
Oh, Mampong.
Asante Mampong.
Asante Mampong. Please go ahead. I know this is very close to you. Judicial is close by. So what's your contribution on the subject?
Decriminalization of the
suicide.
My view is that if we compare ourselves to the Europeans and Americans, theirs are higher than us. They have decriminalized their suicidal cases. So if we follow suit, what will happen to us? So if this boy knew that he would be imprisoned, he wouldn't have taken that chemical. So I think we should look at that case again.
Okay. Would you also do the advocacy that we need to decriminalize suicide?
I don't agree with that.
Okay. You think that if you want to take your own life, it's a crime?
Yes. I think the law should remain so that it will deter some people from taking their life.
Okay. Frank from Asante Mompon, thank you for calling through this interaction this morning. We're grateful. Now let's go to Tony. Tony is just nearby. Malam, right here in Accra. Tony, good. That's where we have Gideon. Gideon, good morning to you.
Gideon, all what I'm saying is that we shouldn't rush to crucify the assistant headmaster. You see, the crop of students that we have right now, we have a lot of recalcitrant students. So if you're not very careful, if you don't show paternalistic tendencies and other things, you might go overboard. So the most important thing is that the guy didn't die. And then I'm not sure that he's going to die. Okay. So all that we are saying is that I want to give a candid advice to all teachers and all stakeholders that we have to put a foot. We have to be very cautious when we are dealing with the students. Because ideally, I want to tell you, a teacher suggested something that about 50% of these students, it's like they don't make their left from their right. They are missingless. Some of them are missingless and missingless. They joined the SHH bandwagon and they are misbehaving in the schools. So all that we are saying is that we are praying that the guy survives, and we are also praying that nothing untoward happens again. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. That was very succinct, straight to the point. Now let's go to Sogakofa, and it's where we have Victor. Victor.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please. You've been watching or listening in. What were your contribution to the discussion so far?
I want to contribute to the open issue. I am one of I'm also my mother, which is 30 years old. My mother was staying in the family house, and unfortunately, he also abandoned. So I came back from Nigeria, and I took my mother out of the place, and I now built a house for my mother. And so then I now changed my mother from their traditional way to Christian. And unfortunately, when the people now saw that the traditional God something, my mother is no more following. And they gang up and they went to the 90-year-old woman's house. They now brought the 90-year-old woman out of his own house. They own his property, bring his building down, even a crops, this power and all this that is training. They put it inside the fire, live. And as I'm talking to you, my mother is somewhere staying. For over 1 year now, these cases have been in the court. No, we are not even getting anything at all. Police will tell you we are afraid of the community because they have this spiritual to do something, so we cannot catch them. That's all what you hear about them. So this issue of this thing is happening. Me, myself, I'm a victim. As I'm talking to you, the 90-year-old woman is living. The apartment is down. The pictures is everywhere. We have the case in court. The people who destroyed the building, police cannot arrest them because there's a politician behind.
So you took your mother to another place to avoid the people from a...
Today, as I'm talking to you now, the 90-year-old woman, I am the only first child that he don't even take care of. I am the first child he don't even take care of. The other one simply that he take care of. They are the one that even drive the woman. And I am a Christian. My mentor, T.B. Joshua, always tell us that old women, you have to take care of them.
Well, we're sorry to hear there's a deal, but thank you very much for sharing it with us. I think when we discussed it yesterday, we did indicate that it wasn't peculiar, except that in this latest case, it was recorded. I guess that's why a lot of people are able to relate, because they can see the video, but there are lots of things happening that have not been captured by the cameras. Really, really sorry for what you've gone through.
I do agree with you. But please make sure that you keep the conversation ongoing, and you can do so virtually. We do have our social media platforms. Join News on TV is for Facebook, at Join News on TV, our Twitter handle, and let's all get the conversation going on. But look, we have to bring you the latest showbiz headlines, but before we do so, let's run this by you. Golden Finger Industries Limited is a fast-growing manufacturing company, and they are processing fruits into quality organic cosmetic products, cleaning and disinfectant, produced right here in Ghana under certified FDA conditions. And they do have in stock GF hand sanitizers, GF rubbing alcohol, antiseptics, GF multi-purpose liquid soap, GF hand washing soap, GF antiseptic cleaner, the GF multipurpose glass cleaner, and they are located at the Giselle Estates, SEC DVLA, right on the Wager Road. You can contact them on the following lines: 05462740770, and then also 05462739990. They do have a reliable landline, and it is 0302957950. We have to take a break. When we come back, Sweet Caddy is right here with the latest showbiz news.